Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Witchy Business. This week, this is how we roll. We literally just have like one word or a topic, and sometimes we just chat. But this week we were thinking about talking about helplessness. So something nice and light and fun for you.
As always.
Uh,
Yeah. And this is something that we've been talking about and exploring within ourselves recently. And I actually, just before this, I just Googled the definition of helplessness because I thought that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
The dictionary definition is unable to defend oneself or act without help.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotion of helplessness is a sense of being unable to act or react to a negative situation. And it may be experienced by anyone, especially during illness or when affected by a traumatic event.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Yeah, to me, when unless it's physical, like you're stuck in bed, you're really ill, and you can't do things, and you've got that feeling of helplessness. When you've got that emotional feeling of helplessness, to me, it's just a real proof that you're living from your past and not from your present. It's when you're living from that stuckness of when something happened that froze a moment in time for you, a trauma, big T or little t trauma. It's when you're living from that place, because if you're living from the place of a 2-year-old or an infant or a young child, well, you're much more helpless than when you're an adult. You are actually not capable of doing something without someone's help. So when that feeling of helplessness arises, I feel like that's a good clue that you're living from a frozen moment in time. And that's like your invitation into inquiry, that it's showing you the door of like, this is where you need to look into, which is much easier said than done. So yeah, because when you're living from that place, you're also maybe not as capable to be that adult that can observe the situation and like go in. So I feel like that's a good time to seek support as well. When you feel like you need help, sometimes you just need help and it's okay.
What does helplessness feel like to you? Like, what comes up for you in those moments where you feel helpless and then you know to go deeper and investigate?
It often comes up when I feel really lonely. Like, to me, yeah, like those two are quite linked, because I feel like there is no one to help me. And I feel like what comes up a lot for me in the helplessness is that I'm not going to be able to do it unless I really fight and like bring out that fighter in me that I had developed. Except I don't have I don't want her around. So it's like, oh, it can be things that I've done before, but never in a soft, kind way to myself. It's like, I don't know how to do this without really fighting or burning myself out. That's when that comes in, because it's like, it's a brand new way of doing something. So I've got nothing to compare it to. sometimes that can, how about you? When does what's that?
Yeah, I resonate with the alone because helplessness, I see that as being really linked with being alone, but the feelings it brings up for me is anger, frustration, sadness, and I didn't realize before working through this with my coach, I didn't realize that actually it was this recurring theme of helplessness, because for me it always showed up as frustration and anger that I can't do what I want to do or get what I want to get, because it's often linked to an outcome, and when I'm not achieving that outcome, those are the feelings that come up. But then I realize it's a sense of helplessness. Yeah. Which is really interesting to witness, because now I know when I'm in those moments and I recognize that it's actually this feeling of being helpless, like you said, it's being stuck in the past. And when I reflect on that, I know now as an adult that I'm not stuck and helpless, and so that then allows me to move forwards from a place of not being helpless. And I didn't realize that until really recently.
It's funny, isn't it, how something can feel so obvious, yet it's so like part of us and stuck to us that we can't distinguish it from ourselves, like it's our blind spots and we just don't see it. And then once you see it everywhere.
Yeah, literally everywhere. Like, even just, here's like a fun share. Last week I messaged you saying, so Matt's away for the weekend, and Matt's my husband, for anyone who doesn't know, and I ordered a new desk for my office. And usually he just puts up the furniture, he would put up my desk, and it's not that I can't do it, it's just that I didn't really want to, and it's just easier because he'll just do it quicker. It's just easier.
It's easy for him to do it, so he might as well.
Yeah. And so for me this weekend, it was so extremely important that I received my desk, carried it up the stairs and put it up myself. And I sent you a picture, like, I did it. And it felt so empowering to just be able to do that for myself. And I know that sounds really basic and simple, and it goes far beyond, putting up desks. We can talk about this for hours and hours, but that's just a really small example of how, when I knew that he was going away and then my desk was coming on the day that he was going, I felt like, oh, what am I going to do with my desk? And then I was like, no, I can put up a desk myself. But it's, if I let that consume me, then I would have just waited,
and being frustrated that whole weekend.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to see, like, how frustration is so linked to it. Just like, ugh, he's not here, can't have my desk.
Yeah. So and then every time I walk past it in its box, like, ugh, still in its box.
I'm sure there would have been like a little bit of like, Matt, you had to be away the weekend that I ordered my desk, and so always what happens, like.
Yeah. And then like frustrated at myself for not ordering the desk sooner.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I find it fascinating to find like what's underneath like those more surface or easily recognizable emotions. And it comes in layers, like maybe you hadn't identified frustration as being part of you so much, and then when you become like comfortable with that, with seeing that that's part of who you've been and how you've been in the world, then it's like you can access like another layer of like, oh, but there's this under it, and there's always something under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, many layers of helplessness. I can definitely think of lots.
Yeah, and then there'll be something under that that you haven't seen yet, that when you're ready to hold, when seeing that much helplessness becomes like comfortable, just like, yeah, this is part of who I've been, but not necessarily who I am anymore. Then I'm sure there'll be something else that pops up in there.
Yeah. And I think thinking about how it relates to business as well, there are times when maybe what you're working on, or I say you as in a general you, what you're working on isn't going the way you planned, or maybe the client that you really wanted to work with isn't ready to work with you yet, or whatever that is. And in those times, for me, there is that feeling of helplessness. And I see so clearly how that also is to do with control. So it's like I'm trying to control an outcome that isn't within my control, because ultimately, like what is, like, you can control things to a certain extent, but ultimately, like, you can't control everything. And so then it leads to the feeling of helplessness, because it's like, but things aren't working out, and now I'm helpless because I can't physically do anything to achieve that outcome that I want to achieve.
Yeah. It's like when I can't control it, then I'm helpless. Like there's that.
Yeah.
Do anything about it feeling. Yeah.
And so
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so in those moments, what I have been trying to do recently is allowing myself to let go of the control. Again, easier said than done, but letting go of the outcome and focusing on who I am showing up as. So I am not showing up as the helpless one now. I am showing up as someone who is empowered to make my own choices and decisions and do what I can for myself. And that allows me to move forwards towards what I want to achieve within my business, whilst letting go of the control of the outcome.
Yeah. And in that, you feel more empowered and less hopeless.
Yeah. And using the desk as an example, it can be just taking small steps, sending an email out to someone, whatever that looks like. It's not, whereas before I would have just collapsed in, like, retreated because, oh, I'm helpless, like I can't do whatever I want to do, so I'll just like sit and not do anything, or like procrastinate, or whatever it looks like, because it always looks different, doesn't it? And then it's like when you think about showing up as that person who isn't helpless, I am not the helpless one, then you take steps forwards, then you know what to do.
Yeah, but it's like when you're in the depth of the helplessness, it's hard.
Yeah.
Help yourself.
Yeah, it is.
There is that moment of having to take a bit of a leap, and it can feel like it's only about things to do, like I'm just gonna go build that desk and then I'll be fully empowered, and then suddenly you feel helpless in something else. And I feel like helplessness is one of those where you've got to have, to me, there's like all this like self-compassion that needs to come in. And talking about layers, like self-compassion is really hard for me. Self-love, yes. Self-compassion, very difficult.
Yeah.
And then you've got that layer of like self-compassion, and why is it hard? Like what's underneath that's making it difficult personally. And I think a lot of the times there's shame in there. And and then you just see like how layered it is, how big it actually is. Like you go from, you feel frustrated because you feel helpless, and it's difficult for you to help yourself when you're feeling helpless because you struggle with self-compassion, because there's shame there. Like it just
Yeah. And I say all of this showing up today feeling empowered after just 2 days ago putting my desk together, and yesterday I went to a static dance, and that always connects me with myself and roots me in my power. So definitely, like I'm today coming from a place of like feeling empowered, but asked me last week and I was fully there. Like not having compassion for myself, trying to. So you're right, it's not always easy.
No, and I think it's just like, we talk about this so much, and I obviously love to talk about this, but it's just like we grow our ability to be with these uncomfortable emotions, and not pushing them away and journeying our way through them. Like, you don't rock up to the gym one day and lift 120 kilos. Maybe some people do, but you don't just go from how you've always been to suddenly one day never feeling helpless. It's an exercise. And it comes with like presence and showing up for yourself, and being conscious, like having that awareness when that specific thing is coming up, and being able to hold space for yourself in those moments with love, with compassion, but also like as an adult without like overly coddling yourself, and it's so big. There's so much, and there's no like set solution or way to get there. It's individual to everyone, and I think that's part of the beauty of it. Like that's the interesting part of it, isn't it? That we just got to all be curious into ourselves and kind of figure it out our own way.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, do you think that as women, it's more ingrained in us to be helpless?
I reckon, because it's part of like that, societal, how we've been portrayed, little princess stuck in her dungeon waiting for a prince to come and save her from the dragon.
Yeah.
And it's almost like sometimes seen as attractive. You know, like I remember having a boyfriend once tell me, yeah, but I don't know, like, what do I do in your life? And I was like, what? It's like, you never need me. And I was just like, can you not be there for more than fixing my car or helping me build a desk, you know? It was just like, well, you weren't here a few months ago. And a few months ago when this happened, I called my dad and figured it out over video, or, you know, figured it out. I don't know, like.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had this whole chat with this guy because he was, yeah, it was really hard for him to not, like, that was how he was used to showing up. And I do think like that's a big thing as well. Like, women are less helpless, and then men don't really know where that fits in. But I feel like it belongs to everyone. Like, we all, obviously, I don't know what it is to feel helpless as a man, but I think it's just a human experience, and we just like show it differently. If we go super cliche, it would be like women feel helpless to build stuff and fix things, but maybe men feel more helpless when it comes to having to support someone emotionally. And I'm purposefully overly cliche with this, but I do think we all have this. I really think it's a human experience, and that maybe with some women it's been like easier to show because it's almost like seen as an attractive trait that you would need a man so you can show yourself as this weak, helpless being.
Yeah. Because when you think about all the Disney movies, it's always based on the women being helpless, being rescued, being saved. But yeah, if helplessness is something that's ingrained or something that has come from a past trauma, then everyone's going to have that on some level.
Yeah.
And then I wonder how much upbringing comes into that as well. So yeah, like, yeah.
I definitely feel like if your parents always did everything for you and told you, no, you can't do that, like, let me do it,
Yeah.
then you've got a bigger chance of helplessness being a more obvious part of you, how you're being. But again, like we spoke about all the layers, for someone helplessness might be that first layer, and for someone else it might be a few layers back. But the more I work with clients and the more I inquire into myself, I'm like, all these experiences, all these emotions, all these ways of being are completely universal. Just takes us, like, they're just in different orders. Even like, yeah, they're just, yeah, different intensities for each of us, and we'll notice them for different things.
Yeah. I think what I find the most interesting is thinking about the identity piece around that. Like, when I think about the identity of who I'm being when I'm helpless, it's very different to the identity of who I'm being when I'm not. And yeah, it continues to just blow my mind on that journey of exploration.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I just saw when you said that was like, I think when I'm feeling helpless, I'm either like a complete baby and can't do anything, or go into full fight mode where I give that impression of being overly confident, capable, and just like really going for it. Whereas when I'm not feeling so helpless, I come from a much more genuine place, which is actually quite soft.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I feel like for most of my late teens, early 20s, I was very much in that, well, yeah, hustle, very in my masculine, doing it all, doing all the things. And now, having stepped away from that, balancing masculine and feminine, slowing down, I feel softer. The place I'm coming from is softer as well. And again, that continues to be a journey of exploration, because yeah, it's still so, that kind of hustle is still so ingrained. And yeah, how does that relate to helplessness? Well, it's almost pushing, it's almost bypassing it, it's almost pushing away from it. It's like, I am not going to be helpless, so I am going to do all of these things.
Yeah. But it's
And
still
now,
a relationship to the helplessness that you're feeling, and you're just trying to do things to avoid feeling it, because then you'll have it's like you're trying to seek externally all the things to prove to you that you are not helpless,
yeah,
that you're capable. So you do all these things so then you can tell your brain, well, look, we're not helpless, we can do all these things, without understanding that it's still really there.
And shame is so present there as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if the shame is there because we've been so bombarded with the you shouldn't feel helpless. And a woman today shouldn't be the Disney princess.
Yeah.
It's like, how fucking confusing are those messages? Like,
Yeah.
0 to 7, here's a Disney princess that's helpless. And then, no, but don't be that. You know, how do you... And
Yeah.
like I was just thinking, Snow White was doing great before, you know, with her 7 dwarves and just like all her little animals. And I feel like Sleeping Beauty was doing great with her 3 godmothers and in the forest. Like,
yeah, even the Little Mermaid, before she decided that she wanted to have legs and then gave up her voice.
yeah. But it's all like, to be with a man, then you've got to be completely helpless.
Yeah.
But before that, you can be super empowered. And
yeah. I'm starting to get really angry about this now.
Yeah.
Like really angry. But I think even just, going back to, I mean, the desk example, just because it's a bit lighter and I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. Yeah. There was the shame around not being able to put up the table myself. And then even just admitting it, just, like, I don't usually do that kind of thing. But it's not because I can't. It's because I don't want to. But then also there's a part of me that feels like I can't. And then I feel shame because I'm like, but I'm an independent woman. And so, yeah, there's all of these like mixed messages that brings up like so many different emotions. And
it's like, could we just be like, I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And maybe I can learn next time when Matt's doing it, instead of looking
Yeah.
at and just reading the instructions. Like, actually, yeah. It's
Yeah.
something that, like, I need to find another example, because I'm really lucky in the sense that I was always really curious as a kid, and my dad's renovated houses
Mm.
as far back as I can remember. And he always made me do it with him. You know, I because my fingers were smaller, so I could go and reach out for cables. And I've just always renovated houses and fixed things with him. Like, I don't actually
Yeah.
understand how it works, but he just kind of tells me. And I was with my dad and stepmom just like a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
And as it turns out, while I'm there, the boot of the car wasn't like, the car kept saying the boot's not closed, but the boot was closed. So
Right.
we had to like go in there and like play around with the cables and stuff. And I was looking at my stepmom being like, why the fuck is it always when I'm here? And why do I have to go and do it with him? But I'm just really glad that then I feel okay. Like, yeah, my dad had no idea, what the problem was, but we just go in and try to find out. And I feel I've built every piece of furniture in this flat, so building furniture I'm like quite okay with.
Yeah.
But there are things that I feel, it's like I go in a downward spiral and feel, it's the moment I start feeling lonely, then I feel really helpless, or the other way around. I'm not really quite sure, but the two for me are just very, very linked.
Mm.
And I'm so good at being alone.
Yeah.
Like, being alone and feeling lonely are two very, very different things. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking that I think so much of expanding on what we were just talking about that ingrained in women, in our society, in our culture, thinking about like DIY work, I think it's important to know like the essentials, like how to maybe figure out how to put oil in your car, or like pump up your bike tire if you ride a bike regularly. And I say these things like full disclosure, knowing that like I don't know how to do that.
but
And
also Google's great. Like, just,
yes,
you can
and I
YouTube everything these
yes,
days.
and I do that. And I guess that actually that's a good point. I do that. So I know how to use Google, and I know how to sort myself out if I get really stuck. But my dad would always do all those things. Like, I would say, my oil's running low. He'd say, I'll go and do it. Whereas actually now Matt does say, well, you know where the oil is, like, you know how to do it. And I'm like, no, I just don't want to. But what I was actually going to say is, knowing the essentials is important. And I do want to make more of a point of just learning that and empowering myself. But recently, a friend of mine said that her partner was, so because Matt, he is an electrician and he's also a carpenter, so he is very good with DIY and building. And my friend said to me that her partner wishes that she was more, that he was more like Matt and could build more and do more quote unquote manly things.
Yeah.
And then, but I said, but is he interested in that? And she was like, no, not really. And I was like, but that's fine then. Like, as long as he knows how to put oil in your car and pump a bike
So
tire.
you don't have to touch it.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, we don't need to go overboard. I think just going back to like what you were saying, it's okay to ask for help as well. Like, being helpless doesn't mean that you need to, or sorry, not being helpless doesn't mean you need to be able to do everything. It just means that, you need to know when to ask for help and do things that you actually can do. Like, know that you can do it if you want to.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need a little bit extra time, a bit of a breather, whether it is like building a new desk, changing your oil, or holding your emotions, like when they feel way too big. Just being like, okay, I just need a bit more time, a bit more space for this. And yeah, it's funny how helplessness and DIY just
Yeah.
they're just like and I'm seeing now, like with my ex-partner, how much I got triggered that I was better than him and more confident than him in like house stuff.
Mm.
I'd be like, oh, can you help me like drill these holes so I can put this new shelf up or something. And I always end up doing it by myself and it used to just piss me off so much because it was almost like, well, you should know how to do this. But I didn't need someone else to know how to do this because I could do it by myself. Sorry, little charger pause. And yeah, where were we?
DIY, you getting triggered.
Yeah, thanks. But it is funny how like it's sometimes in like that being able to do something that we feel helpless.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But actually, yeah, but is it linked to the doing? Because
I think that just externally shows us something where we're lacking, and maybe that can be really confronting.
yeah, because when I think about the times where I was actually helpless, like what you were talking about in childhood, like when you perhaps can't communicate your needs or you actually can't take care of yourself. Again, that's like linked to an external, but that's just showing you, yeah, I don't know.
And
That's an
I want
interesting point.
to, I'm just gonna sprinkle a little add-on here. There's a difference between helplessness, I feel, and hopelessness.
Yes.
And I'm sharing that because I relate more to the hopelessness, I think, than the helplessness.
I actually
They're
Googled
they're very close.
what is hopeless, because I actually Googled that the other day because I was really interested in knowing the difference. What is hopelessness?
To me, there's a big like, there's no point. What's the point? Just like a giving up energy to it. But in that and how it's linked to helplessness is that, well, it's beyond help. There's no point. That's just the end of it anyway. So there is no point seeking help. And so in that, you feel really helpless.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. That's interesting. And how does that tie into business? I guess in a similar way, or
Yeah, because I think like to me, it feels like the helplessness is more, I can't do it. I need help to be able to do all the things, or that's more like the helplessness, but the hopelessness is, what's even the point of this? Why am I doing this? Does it help anyone? Should I just go back to my corporate job where I knew what I was doing? I didn't feel helpless. I didn't,
Oh yeah, I do know.
but then just being like, no, because I felt even more hopeless
Yeah.
in the corporate job. Yeah, it's just,
Oh yeah. That's a really good way of putting it, of painting the picture. Yeah. Interesting.
and again, I feel like the one who is, it's like interesting to think of who is the one who's feeling hopeless. It's the one who doesn't have enough examples that like this is possible, that what you want is possible. Like there's not enough proof out there. There's not enough Disney princesses who give up their corporate careers and go do something else because they feel like they can actually add to the world. And when I then think of that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go find more of those people who can inspire me. And then I'm going to become that person who's going to inspire, even if it's not others, just myself. Not in a like, I'll show them that this is possible and I can do it and I'll fight and push. Just, I can really do this.
Yeah. And knowing that you can handle it. Because I guess in basic form, it's what you're saying is there's not enough experiences, or there's not enough evidence. It's ultimately, I'm just thinking about myself in times when I felt hopeless. It's not knowing that you can actually survive this.
Yeah. And there's a reason you don't know that. You've never done it before. You've never survived this before. You've never thrived this before. And we don't actually know. Like, I don't know. You know? Do we know if it's possible to have a lifelong like career of doing work in a different way? I don't know. Like, has anyone that I would consider inspiring, is anyone like at the end of their working life? Not yet. Like there hasn't been enough cycles of, so I don't know, but I'm really willing to find out.
Yes, I love that.
I feel like that's us for today.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a really good end point.
And I feel like, you know, for anyone listening who's gone this far, we haven't really given any solutions. Just more encouragement to go find out.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, well, the two things that we covered, helplessness, hopelessness. And like we said, everyone's journey is going to look different. Everyone's experiences, everyone's layers are going to be different. So of course, we can never be like, here's exactly what you need to do to stop feeling this way. It's not also about stopping feeling that way.
Yeah.
But it's about acknowledging it and then knowing, because what you just said about being hopeless, I just think is so incredible. Of course, it's that we've not experienced it, so it's unknown.
Yeah.
But if we really think about, I'm sure everyone listening to this can think about times where they did something new, tried something new, had a new experience, and that felt challenging or scary, but then they did it. And it's just, for me, it's like thinking back to those times where I really found something quite challenging,
Yeah.
and then I got through it, and now look at where I am.
Yeah.
And for me, that really keeps me motivated and keeps me moving forwards.
And it's
In the
almost
same
more rewarding when you found it difficult to go.
yeah
When you didn't know how to do it and then you figure it out, I find that even more rewarding than the times where you're just like, I don't know how to do this, and go in.
yeah. And then in the same way that helplessness, when you think about times where, once you've acknowledged, those times where you've felt helpless, and then just looking at previous times where you've, like even what we just said about Googling it, like there were times when I had my first job and everything was hard, and you don't want to look stupid, so you have to like figure it out, and you just do. And like, yes, that was coming from a hustly place, but even now there are times where I don't know how to do something and I figure it out, versus the times where I feel really helpless and then frustrated and then angry and then sad.
Do you know what I was just thinking? We've got no issue. Like, if you don't know how to cook something,
Yeah.
you just go on Google and look up a recipe.
Yeah.
I don't make that mean that anything about myself.
Yeah. And often I just make it up.
Yeah. And sometimes it tastes better than others.
Yeah.
There has been some sketchy dishes.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So go find your own recipe.
Yeah. And with that, we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening, and rate, review, subscribe, please. Lots of 5 stars. That's what we're aiming for. All the stars. Thank you.